It is strange how a Tuesday afternoon, indistinguishable from any other, can suddenly become a landmark in your life. Just a few unhurried sentences from my grandson managed to shift something deep inside me, changing the way I viewed my history, my family, and my reflection in the mirror. I wasn't looking for it, and truth be told, I didn't realize how thirsty my soul was for it until the water was poured. If you enjoy these stories about the quiet, pivotal moments that shape us, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And before I go on, I'd love to connect with you. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? It brings me such joy to see the names of cities and towns from all over the globe gathering here. Now, let me take you back to that afternoon. It was one of those humid, slow-moving days where the air feels like a heavy blanket. The house had that distinct, hushed quality it adopts when the chores are done, and the afternoon light stretches long across the floorboards. I was sitting in the sunroom, staring absent-mindedly at the dust motes dancing in a shaft of sunlight. I'm in my 50s now. I've worn many hats in this life. Daughter, professional, wife, widow, and now grandmother. Sometimes the word grandmother feels like a heavy coat, comfortable and warm, yes, but thick enough that it hides the shape of the person wearing it. That day, however, I wasn't philosophizing. I was simply wondering if the hydrangea bushes needed trimming, and if I had the energy to start a pot of soup for dinner. My grandson was staying with me for a few days. He's in that transitional age, no longer a boy, but not quite fully settled into manhood. He's taller now, taking up more space in the room, and his voice has dropped an octave, carrying a new kind of resonance. He was sitting opposite me at the small round table, sorting through a shoebox of keepsakes I'd brought down from the attic. It was filled with postcards, trinkets, and faded Polaroids. He was asking questions, tracing the timeline of my life before he existed. "Who is this sitting on the hood of the car?" he asked, pointing to a black and white snapshot. "And why are you laughing so hard in this one?" I answered him, piecing together fragments of my 20s and 30s. As I spoke, I realized I wasn't just reciting facts. I was remembering the texture of those days. The room was peaceful. No television blaring, no phones buzzing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. I noticed he wasn't just waiting for his turn to speak. He was listening. His eyes were fixed on mine, absorbing the stories. Then he said it. He looked up from a photograph of me standing on a beach years ago and spoke with a casual honesty that disarmed me. "It's wild," he said softly. "I always forget that you were the main character of a whole movie that I wasn't even in. You're not just grandma. You're you." It wasn't a poetic speech. It was clumsy, the way young men often are with feelings, but it hit the mark. In that split second, I felt the invisible weight of my role lift. He didn't just see the woman who baked cookies or signed birthday cards. He saw the individual, the human being. I sat with that feeling for a moment. It felt like a warm hand on my shoulder. "What made you think of that?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, though my throat felt tight. He leaned back, looking out the window. "I don't know. I guess I just realized that you carry a lot of stuff we never ask about." We decided to move to the back patio to catch the evening breeze. The wooden deck was warm underfoot, and the crickets were just starting their evening chorus. He sat on the bench, and I took the wicker chair that's been in the family for decades. He started talking about his own life then. The pressure of exams, the confusion of trying to figure out who he was supposed to be. I didn't jump in with advice. I didn't tell him this too shall pass. I just offered him the dignity of my attention. I listened to him the way I had always wanted to be listened to. There was a lull in the conversation, and he turned to me. "Does it bother you?" he asked. "Feeling like people look right past you sometimes?" I was surprised he'd noticed. I laughed a little nervously, then decided to honor his honesty with my own. "Yes," I admitted. "Sometimes it feels like I've faded into the scenery. Like I'm part of the furniture of the family, essential but overlooked." He nodded, looking solemn. "Well," he said, "I see you. You're the anchor. The boat drifts away without the anchor." That metaphor settled in my chest. It wasn't about age, and it wasn't about pity. It was a mutual recognition. Two people at very different stages of the journey, acknowledging that we both just wanted to matter. As the sky turned a bruised purple and the fireflies began to blink in the tall grass, I thought about how fast time runs. If you don't reach out and grab these moments, they slide right through your fingers like sand. That afternoon taught me that intimacy doesn't require a grand event. Sometimes it's just a sentence, spoken true, that stays with you forever. Later that evening, while he was upstairs, I sat alone on the patio for a while longer. The air was cooling, but I felt a glow inside. I thought about how much time I spend worrying about the future or mourning the past, and how rarely I just sit in the now. His words had pulled me back into the present tense. I went inside to start dinner, chopping vegetables with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The sound of the knife on the cutting board felt grounding. I realized I was humming a tune I hadn't thought of in years. When he came down for dinner, he thanked me. Not the automatic thanks of a child, but a genuine expression of gratitude. We ate, and the conversation drifted to his grandfather, my late husband. I told him stories I'd kept locked away, thinking they were too boring or too painful. But he leaned in, elbows on the table, drinking them in. "I hope I remember this stuff when I'm your age," he said. "Memories are resilient," I told him. "They have a way of surfacing when you need them most." That night, after the dishes were done and the house was locking up for sleep, I felt a shift. I wasn't dwelling on what was gone. I was marveling at what remained. The ability to connect. The ability to offer history to someone who needed roots. He stopped at the foot of the stairs before bed. "Thanks for today," he said. "For just hanging out." "Thank you," I whispered to the empty hallway after he'd gone up. The next morning, I woke with the sun. I sat with my coffee, watching the birds at the feeder. The heavy feeling I sometimes carried, the fear of irrelevance, was gone. In its place was a quiet confidence. When my grandson came down, sleepy-eyed and rumpled, we just smiled. We didn't need to rehash the deep talk of the day before. The understanding was already there, woven into the silence between us. We ate toast, laughed about a headline in the paper, and enjoyed the easy rhythm of companionship. When he eventually packed his bag and walked to his car, I stood in the doorway. He waved, promised to text, and drove off. I felt that familiar pang of separation, but it wasn't a lonely ache. It was the sweet ache of having something worth missing. I went back inside. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. That afternoon had given me a gift. It reminded me that even as we age, even as our roles shift, we are never invisible to those who take the time to look. I was still part of the story, a vital chapter that was still being written. Years have passed since that visit, but whenever I feel small or overlooked or weary, I go back to that sunroom in my mind. I hear his voice saying, "You're the main character, too." And I remember that connection is the one thing time cannot erode. It only deepens, turning ordinary afternoons into memories that carry us through the rest of our days.